I'm interrupting the regular Shadowversity schedule to address a very important topic, one that I'm deeply interested in. And so for those of you who are not interested in this topic, well, thank you for joining me. I do hope you'll hear me out, and if you are uninterested, well, stay tuned, the regular videos will be coming out shortly. As evident by the title, I want to make clear, and I've heard the argument, so before people think this is uninformed, no, I've listened to the smoking gun evidence, okay, I've looked into this, and I want to make very clear that AI art does not inherently steal other artists' work or is unethical, and I'm not saying that lightly. Remember, I have heard the arguments, I've seen the smoking gun evidence, and I've looked into this. Very much so, because I do use AI art and I see it as a very beneficial tool, and if I was doing something unethical about it, I hope my track record would speak for itself that I would have a big issue with it and I would stop using it instantly. Even when it's against my own personal gain, I've turned down thousands upon thousands of dollars with denying Raid Shadow Legends sponsorships because I find it a very unethical game, being very exploitative and having predatory microtransactions. I've also turned down not only other sponsors that I thought was unethical, but exposing them as scams when I see or smell something fishy, like I did with Kamikoto knives. Yes, I was the first one to expose them as a scam, and that was in response to them offering me thousands of dollars to promote them, okay? So I take doing the right thing and being ethical very seriously, even when it is against my own personal benefit, and AI art, yes, is very beneficial, but if there was something inherently wrong with it, I would go nuclear against it. In the same way that many other people are, except the evidence and reasoning that they have to do that, I've looked into, and it is actually incorrect. So the primary points of evidence that I'm going to be talking about, and even though AI art is a large subject, I'm focusing this video in on the conversation, accusations that it is unethical and it steals artists' artworks inherently, both with how it was made and both with, in terms of the AI programs, how they are made, and how the AI programs inherently make art. And so I'll be addressing the accusations that AI art was trained off of people's images without their consent, that other artists have found similar compositions or copies of their own work that have been produced by AI art, if AI art directly copies art as proven by the reproducing watermarks and signatures, if AI art copy and paste from other artists to make a composition of other artists' work, and probably the most important and biggest one, if AI art steals other artists' artworks to learn how to make art without the artist's consent. I'll quickly address some smaller but very significant points before I dive into the large one, and then we'll get to the other ones in order. So one of the first criticisms that I think is actually quite easy to address is that AI art can be used for very unethical things. I'll talk about the copying stuff in a second, but for instance, using people's likenesses without their consent, producing pornographic or underage images without their consent, and so on and so forth. And absolutely, that is true. AI art can be used to do some very unethical things, like many things in the past have been used to do very unethical things. To be as delicate as possible, making visual stuff of inappropriate things of underage people is disgusting, vile, and evil, but do we blame the camera that is used to do it or the individual? This is the same with AI art. Yes, AI art programs can be used to do some very unethical things, just like many tools and technologies that exist in the modern day, but we don't take away those tools from people who use it properly or regulate the use of tools like cameras, saying you need a license and stuff just to take photos and things. But if people are discovered doing criminal things with these tools, well then absolutely they should get punished under the law, but you don't take away the tools, especially if they're very beneficial to people who will use them responsibly and ethically. The fact that tools can be used to do bad things does not make the tool inherently vile or evil. But what about if the tool was made through an unethical way, which is the bigger kind of discussion, that the AI programs are trained off of copyrighted images and also images made by artists who did not consent to their artwork being used in the AI. So let's address that topic. The first thing we need to understand about the whole consent argument is that ultimately it does lead nowhere, because the people making the AI programs actually shown and said that they're able to make the AIs to work off of images in the public domain. There are claims that the AI programs would not be able to produce as high quality art as they currently are able to if they didn't reference many other artists' artworks, copyrighted artworks and images. But one of the more recent releases of Stable Diffusion 2.0, which is one of the programs I think it's made by Stability AI, AI. The newer base model uses far fewer copyrighted images and still gets stunning results. And the thing that they're able to do with AI art based off of public domain images is to prompt it to do a more abstract or artistic style and then retrain the AI on these new abstract styles that the AI itself produced to be able to reach the same area in which they've been able to reach using artistic, abstract, actual, works that people have made, even very high quality ones. They don't actually need copyrighted images to produce great results, and they're already moving in that area very quickly. And to appease some of the outrage, they have stopped using many copyrighted images, not because it's actually illegal, but because of threats of litigation and having to deal with the costs of taking it to court, which is a completely different thing, okay? The fact that they want to avoid litigation is not an admission of fault, it's an admission that they don't want to lose heaps of money just having to go through the process. But again, I will address if they actually did something unethical in using pre-existing artworks, copyrighted artworks that are available to be seen online. But the hope that certain people have that they'll be able to prevent AI art from producing really competitive and amazing results by stopping them from using copyrighted images of artists, it's actually incorrect. They're not going to be stopping the development of the AI programs. The Pandora's box has been open in that regard. The technology is here and it is progressing at a very fast rate, and it's open source, and there are countless people in the world who have access to how this technology works. So in terms of the massive data sets that the AI programs have been trained on, there has been revealed some problematic stuff, okay? If you really dig into these data sets, and by the way, these are like billions and billions of images, crazy amounts. And in digging into them, they found things like medical records, also child pornography and things like that. Really, really bad stuff. And the concession that I can definitely make with people opposed to AI art is that, well, more care should have been brought into the vetting process of these, data sets that the AI, producers were making. But this is the other issue, which I don't think is being acknowledged as to how reasonable a demand is of that. We can draw a comparison in the sense of me signing up to a stock image website to get access to all these stock images for me to use in whatever, commercial project that I want. Am I expected to vet every single image, not only for the legality, if it's breaching someone else's copyright or anything like that, or if it has confidential information involved in any number of ways? And no, it'll be completely unreasonable to expect me to be to vet all the images on this website. There is a level of trust that I am giving the source of who is providing these images. And we should acknowledge that the, developers of these AI programs, their desire was to get to access to as many images as possible, not to actually produce AI art. This is a side point, but this was actually to train an AI to be able to, and by the way, it's not actual artificial general intelligence like self-aware. It's an understanding program to be able to look at a bus and realize and detect the mathematical similarities and patterns to realize that's a bus when it processes it, okay? So I can tell the difference between a bus and a person. Why is that really important? Because the main push to train AI to be able to do this was for self-driving cars, not to produce art. And so to do that, they needed as many images as possible to feed through the AI to just get it to learn the difference between one of the two. And then to do that, access to as many images, data sets as possible. And in some of these data sets, I think they had just assumed that it's going to be okay to process, these images through the AI without too much concern. I can understand that mindset, and I see it from both sides, where you could claim they should have had more care and diligence as to what was being fed in, but at the same time, they weren't intending originally. And even if when they got to that point where they're doing it for the purposes of making an AI art generating program, it's very easy to see an assumption on their behalf that it's going to be okay to use many of these images. I don't think they were going out of the way with it, twirling the evil mustache saying, we're going to train the AI art on stolen images and people's private data. You know why? Because when it was revealed that this stuff was in the AI, training things, they took it out straight away. Okay, so I know Stability AI has done it. I don't know about some of the other ones like DALL-E and things, but we do see these programmers, these developers, trying to produce, these things in as ethical a way as possible. So those are the problematic things. But what about copyrighted images? In terms of using copyrighted images to train an AI, legally there's no precedent in the law. This is new ground we are treading as a culture and as society, technology stuff. But there are very clear parallels and equivalences that we can see to determine if something truly unethical has happened. When it comes to the ethics of using copyrighted images, we need to understand the legalities of copyright. Every image that you ever make automatically has copyright to the owner. But as soon as you start to show it to the public, there are certain precedents and things that change legally, especially if it is published under certain licenses like Creative Commons. If you've ever posted an image online, you've most likely posted it under a type of Creative Commons license as detailed in the terms and conditions of the website that you most likely said yes to even to be able to use that platform. But even if it was put online without a Creative Commons license, there is a precedent that happens whenever you show something to the public, okay? If it's available to be seen by the public, there are legal precedents for people to, take inspiration from it, use it in certain ways, and yes, copy it in multiple different ways, legally allowed to copy it. Now, what is a copy? Because when you copy, you can copy something, just its composition, and change the coloring, change the artistic style, and everything like that. It's still a type of copying, but it's not a direct duplication. And there are actually very clear protections to be able to copy and use copyrighted images under fair use laws. I'll talk about those more in a second, but I think it's interesting that a lot of the outspoken critics of AI art brush over fair use, and they say that's not an area they're experienced in, so they can't comment on it. They comment a lot on areas in which they would assumedly be as equally inexperienced in. So yes, fair use has a very big role to play in regards to the ethics of how AI art learns art and produces art. We will get there. But going back to the kind of Creative Commons license, I hope we can give a bit of understanding or a bit of, slack to the developers for the kind of thing that I was describing before, the assumed trust and ability to use it. For instance, like, say someone saw a copyrighted images that was online, but it was being shown not under a Creative Commons license. So under copyright laws, it's illegal to copy, reproduce, show other people, and so on and so forth. Again, fair use allows you to do a lot of that legally without the artist's consent. And fair use is a very useful, great thing, okay? It's good that we have these fair use things, and it's perfectly fine that these developers and people who use AI art to be able to produce art and use art in a fair use capacity. Absolutely. This is a good thing. I'll explain more about that, okay? But say someone copied someone's art, posted it on another website, okay, as their own, and posted it under a Creative Commons license, allowing someone to copy, show, and other things like that. Now, is there an obligation on me as someone just going along on the internet to vet every single image I see? If the image is specifically said, it's fair use and everything like that, whenever you see something, especially if it's presented as their own, I know that's, I'm not excusing someone, stealing someone's art. That is actual, stealing someone's art, where it's a direct, exact duplication, and then you're passing it off on your own. And if AI art is used to do that, just like if Photoshop were used to do that, that is very unethical. But again, blame the person doing it, not the tool they're using to do it, okay? Very unethical things have been done with cameras, okay? But I don't think anyone would criticize me for taking at face value that, just assuming whoever is presenting this art as their own to think it's their own. And if later evidence contradicts that, of course, then you would be able to discover and know. But you take people at their word oftentimes. And so there's a lot of images online that, it would be unreasonable to expect someone to vet every single image they ever see online, especially if they're going to be using it in a completely legal capacity with a precedent that goes back hundreds of years. When I say hundreds of years, almost, or even thousands actually, goes back so far. But if I then got that artwork and used it in a commercial way with the word of the person who posted that it was theirs and allowing me to use it, all right, and it's actually in breach of the true owner's copyright, am I legally culpable for doing that when I'm taking the word of the person that posted it? No, I think every reasonable person would acknowledge that you can't be expected, to have that level of scrutiny. Now, you might say these AI developers should have, because they have a greater duty of care, because they're working with something in a far larger capacity. I do see it from the other side, where they're dealing with billions and billions of images. It'll be almost impossible to vet every single one. I'm not saying that they should just throw everything, but there's a level of understanding of the difficulties of what's being made, and also that it was just to try and train an AI originally to be able to tell the difference between a pedestrian and a stop sign, you know? So I see all these people attacking these companies, ascribing nefarious intent or unethical policies, when I think we should actually consider the other end. We actually don't know what assurances the developers were given, or the assurances they believed about these massive data sets that were provided to them. When I get access to a large body of images, say stock art and everything like that, I'm just trusting that they're all legally sourced and available to be used as said by the person giving the access to it. And so I can actually sympathize with the difficulties that the developers would be facing when dealing with such enormous data sets, and that they would just take it as face value that, yep, they're all good to be used, and they go ahead. And I think a lot of people would actually do the same, even the people criticizing the fact that things slipped through and bad things ended up being in the data sets. But again, as I said at the beginning, the AI programs can be made without the bad stuff and produce just as good as results, and they're already very close to that. Just avoiding copyrighted images for the sake of avoiding legalities, not because they're actually unable to use copyrighted images that have been presented to be seen by the public. And that's kind of the key point, okay? As I was just talking about, is that if you have presented an image, an artwork that you've made yourself, to be seen by the public, okay, that alone establishes many fair use allowances of the art and precedents that people have done with art for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Case in point, have a look at this image. You might recognize the artist. It's by Van Gogh. Many people who see this image just think it as a Van Gogh image, but have a look at this one. Looks somewhat similar, wouldn't you say? It is the Sower by Millet, don't know how to pronounce it. And Van Gogh copied the original artwork. I think the understanding is that was a technical piece for him to just try and, improve his own work. Artists have been copying other artists for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's just one example amongst millions upon millions, okay? And even in a modern sense, Van Gogh's interpretation of this art piece would be absolutely allowed under the conditions of fair use, because there is enough transformation in the piece. It's not a direct duplication, okay? It's not passing it off as the original that Millet made. Sorry that I can't pronounce that. But artists have been imitating other artists from the beginning, and one of the main ways is to improve their own skill sets, all right? This is a standard understood thing with artistic practice. And I see a direct equivalence with people using AI to do the same. And that's the thing, because people will assume it's AI doing this, all right? And that the difference is, it's okay when a human does it, but when an AI does it, that's unethical for reasons that do not convince me, because this is the thing. Say I wanted to make a reinterpretation of the original Sower painting in a new artistic style, and the medium or tool I wanted to use was AI instead of, say, Photoshop, and my intent was to copy this art in a new way. There's actually no true significant difference there, only the tool that I'm using. It's still a person choosing to do the thing that they have chosen to do, like artists have chosen to do, for hundreds, if not thousands of years. If you want to see an even more direct and modern example of artists copying other artists, just type in Vincent van Gogh Starry Starry Night on DeviantArt to see how many artists have been copying Vincent van Gogh. And this is not a bad thing in any measure. In actual fact, it's a wonderful thing. People trying to learn someone else's style to complement their own in the hopes of adopting some or even all of the elements of this style to be used in their own future unique artworks. So the idea of consent, okay, did the developers have consent to train the AI off their images? Can we acknowledge the type of consent that's already given when people post their images online to be seen by the public? There is an implicit level of consent that's already granted. When any artist lets anyone else see their work, there is a type of implicit consent that they can't stop anyone looking at that and referencing it in their own memory and imitating it, using it, working off of what they saw as inspiration for future works. And then, of course, you have the Creative Commons allowances, which allows people to copy, repost, share. So if you have shared an artwork or an image online, there's very high chances, okay, I know with DeviantArt, it's very much this, that you've agreed to a Creative Commons license, which allows people to share that artwork, okay, and even download and save it onto their computer. There's also the matter of what it actually means to copy. And I kind of mentioned this already, because there's a difference between copying, okay, because what exactly are you copying? You can copy things in a lot of ways that are perfectly allowed under fair use. If art is used in a transformative way, you're nearly guaranteed that that is a fair use application. And you might be shocked at how close some of those, uses are in terms of how close, or you also might be shocked at how little transformation is needed for it to actually be used. And it's not just transformative uses as well, by the way. There are other conditions that allow fair uses of copyrighted works. So there are multiple allowances for copying, but direct reproduction, where it is exactly the same, like there is a digital artwork, you literally copy, paste, okay? Of course, passing that off onto your own is unethical and illegal. But even that level of direct duplication, especially if it's been posted online to be seen by the public, which means very likely it's under some type of Creative Commons license, is absolutely allowed. And so in kind of summary with the example from Van Gogh and just precedent that we see everywhere, people are legally allowed to use someone else's art to make new art, and they don't actually need their consent. And I'll explain that. When an AI sees someone's art or image that has been intentionally shared with the public so it can learn from it, it does nothing to the art itself. It does not change it, it does not reproduce it, it does not distribute it, okay? Each one of those things, there are copyright protections under if they don't qualify for fair use protection. But an AI program, when learning off this art, doesn't do any one of them. Again, it doesn't copy it, doesn't reproduce it, doesn't distribute it. No one's copyrights were actually infringed upon, and nothing illegal has happened. And even though the AI is capable of reproducing it, that doesn't actually happen in the training process, apart from maybe copying and pasting from one file to another, to my understanding. It's not reproducing it, it's not passing off the art as its own. I'm talking about the training process. I know individuals can prompt an AI to do things very close to that, but that's on the individual, not the program, not the tool they're using to do it. So when I look at this argument here about artistic consent, I can see no artist's actual rights under the law were infringed upon by using publicly available images to be trained in the AI. Now, people say, what if the ones that were not publicly available? You need to understand what is actually available and not in the terms and conditions where these images were originally posted. So for most of the cases, at least, it doesn't seem anything illegal actually happened. And for the exceptional cases where there are truly problematic stuff, the developers are already addressing it right away and taking it out of the AI programs and they acknowledge that, yeah, it really certainly seems unintentional. And if you wanted to be as critical, trying to understand what they're dealing with, you could have an argument for it being careless, but then I would wonder whose fault is it, okay? Because I'd be wondering who was allowing or providing access to these data sets that had actual images in that shouldn't have been used, that, really bad, some really bad stuff. Now, there might be future legislation that defines an AI's right to see and learn from copyrighted images and other pre-existing artworks, different to a person's right. Currently, there's nothing like that. And at the same time, I think that's a skewing of the understanding, because a person should still have the right, especially under fair use protection and everything, to learn from other people's artworks, to imitate it, to try and develop the same styles and things. And then what if the person wants to do that and just use AI to achieve it? Okay, the AI art programs, it's the person doing it. And so in hypothetically restricting the AI's right, you're actually taking away rights of individuals and people and aspiring artists that want to use this tool to develop artworks that they envision. And even if people really want to push it to a different kind of legislative standard for AI programs versus people, it's not going to achieve what they want, because the developers are showing that the AI can produce equivalent results, and it's just getting better and better by using open source images. So the next part of that is the fair use stuff, which I've referenced, already talked a little bit about. Have a look at these two images here. It's an example of transformative use of an entire copyrighted work. Comic artist Trina Roberts reworks the entirety of Reginald Marsh's 1934 painting High Yeller in the opening panel of Lulu's Back in Town in 1976. And while she retains nearly every aspect of Marsh's composition and figure poses, Roberts has completely altered the original work's style and format. This is a great example of transformative use of artwork, and it actually validates basically every single AI-generated artwork that people have grabbed onto to claim that it was copying their own original work in some way. And there's more to that than people might realize, because to get the AI to match a pre-existing artwork so close, usually that's the result of a person doing it, not an inherent issue with the AI. And this is about the type of information you fed into the AI, the model you're using, okay, if it's a very limited model, and also the prompt that you've put into it to try and guide it towards a certain result. And so you have transformative uses, also have parody and satire, and on top of that, also, and this is something that people miss, if your use of the art does not impact the original artist's ability to make a profit of their artwork, you do not need the copyright owner's consent to use artwork in fair use capacities. And it's not unethical either, especially if these images were posted online to be viewed by the public. And so the whole debate about the AI programs and developers needing the individual artist's consent to use their artwork in already pre-established legal ways, in most vast majority of instances, perfectly legal, with direct precedents and standards that's already done in the real world, okay, and with the understanding that it's an individual choosing to do this through a tool that has been developed, okay, and so the argument that an AI should have different rights to a human, what if a human chooses to use this tool, okay, and so it actually comes back to the human rights to be able to do this, which is already pre-established in the law and is completely ethical, with only very distinct exceptions, but the exceptions shouldn't break the norm, and the developers seem to be responding to those exceptions directly anyway. And in fact, they're going further to try and appease the people who are making a really big outcry of this, probably to avoid litigation and loss of finances and stuff in that regard, but not because they're actually breaking the law or doing anything unethical in the first place. I think it's actually great that artists can be inspired by other artists, and I want more art in the world, okay? Greater works to be produced and in greater quantity, and I think that would be wonderful, and in terms of benefits, I can even talk about that, but I have a track record of making things and releasing it to the public domain right away because I want to encourage people making more. I did this with certain weapon designs, like my scabbard design. It's a design of a backscabbard you can draw from your back without any public. Go. Anyone, use it without my consent as much as you want, and you don't even need my consent in the first place, okay? I didn't copyright or patent it or anything, okay? But I want people to use those things. My design of the sword shield, the sword, dumb name, but anyway, free to use. My more accurate design of Winterfell, I wouldn't really, I could try and copyright the exact design, and I say if it's not Winterfell, it's just any cast, but no, I've released that to the public and gave people access to the 3D files. Only very specific instances do I keep my copyright, but I actually don't want my copyright to last forever. I think it goes too far. I think Star Wars should honestly be in the public domain by now. And I'm an author, my book right there. Yeah, if it ever gets popular enough, I think that would be wonderful. And what a compliment for people want to reproduce it and reinterpret and make new wonderful things out of my story and characters. That creates more art in the world. The fact that we can create any different interpretation of Robin Hood and many of the classic tales is great. I think public domain is wonderful. Sharing and having more art be made is great. And I understand copyright, but I think copyright can go too far, and I'm practicing what I preach here. So I've addressed the whole discussion about the developers needing consent to train the AIs, but what about how the AI produces art? And some of the claims is that it copies other artists' styles without their consent and just copying other artists. The way it's made is copy and pasting, kind of like making a collage of other people's pre-existing works. They claim it makes direct copies, and other artists have even found similar compositions to their own work. So let's go through each one of these, and you might notice that a lot of them are already being addressed by the discussion we've had, like fair use. For instance, these are artists that have found AI-generated images that are very close to their own. Now, first of all, there's easily enough transformation in these images to have perfect fair use protection. Right here, though, where we see these comparisons, they say the AI literally ripped off the whole composition. The whole composition, kind of similar to this example here. That's perfectly allowed. There's nothing illegal that's happened here. But they also seem to use these examples as proof that the AI inherently copies other artists' styles when they actually don't know what happened to get this result. To get a result that's very similar to a pre-existing artwork, that's usually something that needs to be done by the individual, not the actual way the programs work. I'll give an example. I actually don't know what model was used to produce this result, because people can make their own models based on whoever's artist they want, and oftentimes for the purpose and intent for it to copy the artistic style, okay, oftentimes anime style, which they're allowed to do, legally allowed to do. You can't copyright an individual style, okay? People are allowed to try and imitate other people's art. Artists have done it for ages, and if they want to use AI as a tool to do that, they're entitled to. They can. They have those rights. People have those rights. Now, to produce such a similar result, oftentimes it is something that a person has done, either by the model or the prompt that they did. Here's an example. Here are the images that I've used to train Stable Diffusion to understand the mathematical similarities of my face, okay? And you can train it to understand your face to reproduce it. Now, what it creates is it kind of merges. You can choose a base model that it merges into, but the initial underlying base model it creates is very limited because it had limited input, these images that I gave it. And so if I don't give the AI any real kind of creative prompt and just do make an image of Shad as you've been trained to do, its results are very similar to what the inputs were, the training. But if you'll notice, it's not the same. It's actually combined certain things. It's changed the color of my brigandine here. My brigandine should be red. And then it's added the kind of my chainmail hoodie that I never wear with the brigandine. It's actually has molded a new image based off of the references it has. It didn't copy and paste or make a composite. That's not how the AI generates. It's actually impossible for it to do that. It creates an image from static. It's a diffusion model, and then it kind of renders down the static again, molding it bit by bit after the references that it was given, creating something brand new. This is a new, unique artwork that was, you could say, copied in the sense that it was inspired and it was following essentially it's following the mathematical patterns of my face to get similar results, but it's not identical. Like, again, these are not direct duplications, and I didn't copy and paste the images. It's creating something new following the guidelines I am telling it to. I'm making it do this, okay? And so AI art can be used to make things that look very similar to pre-existing artworks if a person prompts it to do it. But then if I prompt it in a certain direction, okay, and increase the size of the direction, look at what it's able to produce for me now. And by the way, it took time to tweak and refine this prompt to get better results. This is a completely new image. Like, it's unique, never been seen before, made from scratch. If I copy the seed number and do it in, it'll make the same thing based on the initial diffusion pattern that it was working with. But when you it generates a new seed randomly from any possible numbers, and you get really interesting results, sometimes shockingly good when you work with it and refine it. For instance, look at this. Now, I would ask someone, which artist did it copy to be able to produce this? I mean, if you're looking at, it's not duplicating, but the main thing it copied were images of me, because I told it to, okay? This is me telling it to you, and then warping, molding kind of that reference into artistic styles that I'm asking it to be able to reference, just like what real artists do. And so this also debunks the notion that the AI works out of making a kind of a collage from pre-existing stuff, because I showed you the input images. These are the images it was going off of. And if it, like, you can look at any one, right? It's literally impossible for it to produce this result here by direct duplication and copying the source images it's working off of, because the source images are photos and the result is literally an artistically digital, it's like a piece of digital artwork, right? It's not copy and paste, okay? And it's not creating a montage where it grabs elements and stuff like that. It's creating a piece of art completely fresh, anew, from scratch. This is a unique piece of art that actually I had to mold and get it to remake certain elements to fix proportions, everything. The original one had a much too high head. Forehead was way too big. And so, because I have an artistic eye, I can see something that's wrong with this. It's out of proportion. I was able to use the tool, the AI, to fix it. And so the original had buffy hair, so I needed to fix that. And then the forehead was too big, so I needed to fix that. Lowering it, finished piece, okay? And that does take a certain level of artistic ability to be able to see what's in proportion, what's not in proportion, how to fix it, to get a much more polished, fine result, which is why artists will be able to produce the best AI-generated art than anyone, okay? Because you need to understand proportion, you need to understand composition, lighting, all these elements. And so, yes, AI art can produce something that is very close to one of the images that it was trained off of, but the result will never be a direct duplication because it doesn't, that's not how the technology works. It does not copy-paste, it recreates afresh, just like those examples where it was very close to the originals. Remember, if I remove every other prompting telling it to do something nicer and just do this, it'll be very close to the input images, but it's not exactly the same. In actual fact, there is still enough differences because the size of the eyes are a bit different, the compositioning, and just the fact that it's a bit more, like this result here is a bit more smooth over, might be also resolution, right? That's actually easily more than enough for it to be transformed enough to have fair use protection, okay? And I could not really get this AI program to get closer to the original input images than what you're seeing here. If I start prompting it, I wouldn't do it. Sorry, this is one of my classic expressions. Anyway. So this reference here actually isn't the smoking gun that people are assuming it is for AI art stealing art. One, it doesn't inherently do it. It needs to be prompted to do it, usually by a very restricted model and the type of prompt that you put into it. And even then, the differences that they're showing are transformed enough for it to be perfectly protected under fair use. There's another smoking gun piece of evidence that people have been using to try and prove that AI copies art. Now remember, if you understand the technology and what I've explained, it's impossible for it to inherently duplicate one for one. That's not how the technology works. It will always have differences. That's just the nature of it, okay? And interesting, this next point of evidence is something that actually proves them wrong, and that's when it says it's clearly been copying other artists. They say stealing other artists' artwork because it also reproduces signatures. This is the thing, though. And so I've got an example right here from my own artwork. This is one that I was using the AI to reinterpret one of my own original artworks to do it in a new style and upgrade, make it actually better. And the results were phenomenal. I was so thrilled about this, okay? And in some of those results, look what we have here. We have, well, people say that they're signatures, but I would pay money for the person to be able to find whose artist signature that is, that it has duplicated. In actual fact, these are unreadable static messes, okay? Here's some of the batch results that I was working with, and I was just refining it. Which one was it? Oh yeah, I was trying to get a belt, a new belt on it, and so it was always reproducing. And so we see the, like, that's actually what the AI has done, because input images have had artist signatures, and the AI is molding the new thing based off of the references it has, just like a person does, and it wasn't told to exclude the signature, which a person, when they're doing, kind of just knows inherently, but it can be told that, okay? And it just thinks that the artwork needs to have a type of squiggly line on one thing, and it makes a new one. These squiggly lines, these signatures, they're not copying other artists' real signatures in the sense that it's a duplication. It's recreating a new signature that's a complete mess. If anything, this is direct proof that it doesn't copy, that it makes something new, okay, from input and references it has, just like what real people do. I started signing my art just because I saw other artists do, like, that's the thing that you do, and I made my own signature and put it to it, and what the AI is doing here is essentially equivalent. It's not making its own, like, individual signature. This is a sign of, you know, what it has made, but it has made a brand new squiggly line based on its references, because that's what the AI has been taught goes with these types of artworks, and it produces that result. It's not stealing or copying. This is proof it's making something completely new, because whose artist signature is this? It doesn't exist. It made a signature completely from scratch, from new, just by referencing the data set it had. So if anything, far from proving that it's copying stuff, it's not. It's proof that it's creating something completely new and unique, which is what AI does, which is why it's actually not direct duplication in the sense of copying duplication like that, okay? You could say it's imitating. Yeah, okay, it's copying in a sense of imitating other artistic styles, okay, and other artistic images, just like humans do. Humans imitate other humans, and guess what? Humans can choose to imitate other humans by using a tool called AI art. I use Stable Diffusion. That's the tool I choose for it to imitate other artistic styles that I find really pleasing, okay? It is my right to imitate other things and make something new. Because when you combine multiple styles, you generally do. We've all acknowledged that by combining things, it makes something kind of fresh and different, and we've acknowledged it as new. People think that I was copying, say, Art Germ style. I think it's Stanley Liu. Let me look it up. Yes, Stanley Liu or Lau, because in my prompt that I put into the AI, I want it to imitate that art style, just like I am free to try and imitate that art style if I hand drew it myself. And he's not the only one. J. Scott Campbell is another one that I have a right to try and imitate, to produce artistic images that are similar in style. But what inherently happens, because the AI works off of so many inputs and everything, it doesn't directly copy that one style unless it's very specifically prompted to by the individual who wants it to happen. So it's the person doing it, not the AI, because if you don't prompt it so specifically to do that, it merges it with all these other references to create something new. Okay, I can merge J. Scott Campbell's style with Art Germ, Stanley Liu style, Lau, I think, and make something new, okay? It's me doing it using the tool, the AI, all right? I'm prompting it and choosing to do that because that is my right as an artist that all artists have done for hundreds of thousands of years. The fact that I'm now using an AI instead of Photoshop or other things. And by the way, people had, similar arguments when Photoshop came out at so many different levels, and there's so many points of equivalence that you can draw to new technologies that are coming out. It's kind of just going around the circle again, though this one with AI seems to be more aggressive because of how high quality the results are. That has really caused people to be defensive because they are worried they're going to be losing their jobs. And I can talk a little bit more about that a bit later if... This video is going to be a long one anyway, so we'll see. Everything that I just talked about applies to watermarks as well, okay? And people say, watermark is there so people don't copy the original image. No, the watermark is there to try and prevent people from duplicating the exact result. You're allowed to use watermarked images if they've been put online to be seen by the public in any fair use capacity, just like you can with AI art, and there's several conditions that allows it. Transformation is one, and those watermarks, usually they're warped, changed in some way because it is actually a unique image that it's made from scratch, and the AI was just imitating the references that it had before, and it thinks that, oh, this type of image has some type of marking that, goes over top, and so it mimics the watermark. So I really want to debunk the myth that it just essentially copy and pastes from other artists' stuff to make a composite that it blends together, that it couldn't be further from the truth with how the AI makes the art, because it's technically impossible. It doesn't make it that. It starts with static, a diffusion pattern, and then refines and refines, okay? And so copy and pasting doesn't work, but I can also show you from the pieces of art that I've made myself. And this one has always been a bit bizarre for me because it seems like a lot of the critics kind of know the limitations and problems that AI have, and then these same people are the ones saying that it copies and pastes. But the thing is though, have a look at how mutated this image is right here. What original image did it copy this from? Genuinely. Find it somewhere online, okay? Are you telling me an artist drew this weird mutated face and these munty hands and stuff? And I mean, these are things that people will say, oh, AI, I can do this, but I can't do hands. Okay, good point. So if it can't do hands and it can get such mutated, mangled results, if it's copying art, which artists in the world are drawing all these mutated hands and faces for it to copy from, all right? If it's copying artists so directly, these results should be impossible. But this is actually the results it more often spits out, all right? Because it's molding the image based on this kind of static diffusion pattern. And that's why you can get such wacky results, because it's making art completely unique from scratch. And it's referencing and imitating the stuff it's been trained on, but not copying in the sense of cut and pasting everything. Again, because these results would be impossible if that was the case. I challenge anyone, find me this hand. See this hand right here? Find me that hand from an actual real artist that it copied and pasted from to make this montage. And you might be saying, oh, it works on a smaller scale and it copies fingers. Really? Because some of these fingers are also mutated. So no, it doesn't. So these are the images I was generating, so I could make a montage. Like if I liked, oh, that skirt was good in one of them, and maybe the face wasn't terrible, or I like the hair, and then I made a montage of the best elements, and it might have been this one where I copied and pasted all together, all right, then fed that through the AI with less restrictions, and then it cleaned up to get this. All right, this was the final result. Now, I want you to have a look at something, because there was something I was getting to copy, because there is a more direct copy ability through, say, Stable Diffusion, and that is image to image, where you input an image as the primary reference, and depending on the freedom that you give it, it will try and stay true to that original image as much as possible, following certain mathematical patterns. And here it is. This is my original sketch, okay? I drew this myself, a piece of art that I never would have made if I wasn't using AI art. AI art has reinvigorated my love and passion for creating art to the point where I'm actually drawing more now than I have in years, because I have this tool to make it even further, far beyond I would ever have the time or commitment to achieve myself, because art is a hobby, not a career. I like to draw to try and visualize things, but not draw for the sense of becoming the best I possibly could. But now AI lets me see my own work in a much higher quality than I would ever be able to achieve, which is thrilling to me, causing me to draw more, to be able to see what it will look like in the final result. And yeah, I can tell the AI to copy this, and depending on the free, like, it's not perfect by any means. But the thing is, though, have a look at the level, because people have seen the final result, the AI generated result, and have said that it copied other people's artwork, specifically Art Germ or Stanley Lau, because that was one of the references I did, or J. Scott Campbell, okay, that it was somehow copying their stuff to make this, when the primary thing it's copying that I'm telling it to copy is the original piece, to the point where the actual folds in the cloth are the same. Do you see the amount, the folds match right down to the exact waves, all right? Like, the pose and composition is exactly the same. So it's baffling to me that people can accuse me of stealing Stanley Lau's art, when no, this is my art. I specifically made it to copy my art, and then to upgrade it, following certain styles, imitating certain styles to make something new. It's a combination of mostly my input with other artistic references, and not just Stanley Lau's and J. Scott Campbell's, because I reference them, but hundreds of pieces of comic book art that it's learned from to be able to understand how to do hair in a comic book style, how to do faces in a comic book style, to get this result, which is thrilling, it's exciting, it's unique. And so it doesn't inherently copy unless you really get it to on purpose, okay? And yeah, the image to image is one way. It's a tool to copy, just like Photoshop, to recomposite and remake something different, and oftentimes, depending on the freedom that you give it, but especially just in text to image, but in image to image, yeah, it's very easy to just make something that is easily different enough that qualifies for fair use. Absolutely, it's transformative. And so now we've actually addressed the primary smoking gun evidences for AI stealing other art and being inherently unethical. And like I said, when I've looked into these specific claims in greater detail, and also understanding how AI works, it's all founded on a misunderstanding and misinformation, and it's just not true. In most instances, there's not only legal precedent, but ethical precedent for the AI to be trained off of other people's art that's available to be seen, because just like you can take someone else's art, put it into Photoshop, and warp, transform, and do interesting creative things to it to make something new and that's transformed enough for it to be fair use, or to have a reference file, or to imitate certain poses in your own art, you can choose to do that with AI art, like Stable Diffusion, just like I can choose to do it with Photoshop. It's direct precedence where you're allowed to use new technological tools to imitate and to copy in certain ways, and use them in commercial endeavors in a transformative way. There are so many equivalents that this is not unethical at all, and the only accusation that actually has a level of merit is like truly illegal images, okay, private images and stuff. But again, there's a much more charitable kind of understanding of the perspective of that, and they can be made without and get the same results. And there are very minute exceptions where, for the vast majority, there was easy ethical and legal precedent to use most of the images that were trained in the AI. And like, for instance, do you really think any of those illegal images were used in a large measure by the AI to produce this? No, okay, like truly illegal, not just like you people saying you didn't have a right to use it without my consent. If you post it online and there's fair use provisions and just you're allowed to look at it publicly, okay, there was perfectly legal and ethical, allowance for the developers to use those arts to train the AI. They're not changing it, they're not redistributing it and everything. Like it was available and allowed to do. It's not unethical for that to do. And the art that gets produced on the other end is not a direct copy. It's a completely unique thing that was made from scratch. Okay, it's not stealing at all. It's not unethical. And those small exceptions that have perhaps the strongest validation of possibly being a valid argument, and I'm not entirely sure yet either, are such a minor exception, and to be honest, most likely wasn't really referenced or used by the AI very much at all, probably. Like, you could take it out and still get that result, because all the other artwork made by artists, okay, that were put online, that they were freely available to use, absolutely get these results. And even when you only work with public domain images, which I actually feel like they don't need to restrict themselves to, there is legal and ethical precedents to work off of publicly available and viewable art, absolutely. But even if they restrict themselves, which is a concession that I don't see people acknowledging, the critics acknowledging very much at all, we'll still be able to produce incredible results. We're seeing it with Stable Diffusion 2.0. And the other thing is people can choose to add and put new inputs in. So even if Stable Diffusion doesn't, individuals have the right to say, well, okay, it's not mimicking the style I want. I can reference all these images made by this artist that is available online in both a fair use capacity, but also most likely Creative Commons, all right, and input those things into the model to make it mimic that the way that they would choose to do it by hand. But now instead of by hand, they're using a different tool to do it. People have that right. It's a precedent. It's existed. And if you're going to be morally consistent about this debate, you need to acknowledge those things. And that's why when I look at it, I have to acknowledge that, no, this is not unethical, not the way that people are claiming at all. And so the primary things that we've addressed here is the issue with consent, okay? If it copies and pastes or makes a montage, of other things, if it directly copies by the tweets and everything, well, it doesn't actually do that. You can get it to, just like you can copy things with Photoshop and duplicate it with Photoshop. That's a person doing it, not the AI. People have the right to copy and imitate other people's artworks, and if they choose to do it through AI, that's just a tool. So the rights that people are trying to say an AI shouldn't have, that a person has, but if a person has that right, they have a right to use AI to do that. And so that's a non-argument then. And also artists finding similar compositions to their work, this thing, they're supposed smoking guns are their signatures, and the watermarks, all those things have been addressed. And the ultimate conclusion is that no, it's not actually copying, duplicating, stealing. It is not stealing art. It's creating art anew, okay? Imitating millions of images as a reference pool that you can focus in, prompt, and use to get incredible results that individuals can choose to do, okay? So the individual can choose and make it imitate other artwork, and that's the individual doing it, not the AI doing it, okay? The individual can prompt it and even make the AI copy other people's artworks. It's in fair use capacity, that's fine as we mentioned, but they can also use it to do terrible things, just like you can with a camera, and do things without people's consent with a camera, all right? And the individuals that do that should be, called out and be revealed as doing something vile and wrong, not the tool that, like, we don't blame a camera for the terrible things that people have done with cameras. Same thing. So there are additional talking points that I'd just like to add into this video because it's the subject of it that is not directly related to the conversation of it, being inherently unethical and stealing art, which I've looked into, and I feel I've been able to establish hopefully a convincing enough argument, but it certainly convinces me. If you have counters to it, I'm more than happy to hear them, but just don't say stuff that's already addressed in the video, because I'll just link the timestamp in the video where I already addressed that point. But I'm more than happy to discuss this with people who still disagree with me, and I'll be more interested in discussing it with the more vocal critics of AI who've been spouting this type of stuff. And honestly, it's founded a lot on misinformation, okay? Just falsehoods, things that's not the reality of how this is. But one of the additional kind of talking points is that, which is, I think, ridiculous, honestly, is that the companies need to compensate artists to use their art to train the AI, as if in the same way like they're selling their art, a direct copy of their art, and therefore the original needs to be compensated. First of all, you don't need to compensate the original artist if your copy version is transformative and it's remade to be something new, different, or different enough, no compensation is needed in that. And most arts that, like, again, in the vast majority of cases, the art is very different to any one composition that you can find. And even the examples where they find it's like they've copied a composition, it's easily different enough to qualify for fair use. And so I don't see any instance where the AI is even capable of producing a one-for-one duplication of an image that it was trained upon, and that's not how it works. And so it's a false equivalent to try and say that the art that was used to train it, the artist should be compensated, because you don't compensate artists, regular human artists, who are referencing other artworks. And also the amount that it's gone into the AI, there's interesting complications about the developers. There's one who's a non-profit, not making money anyway, but then people can use the program to make money, which I say all power to them. Great. Okay. Because yeah, AI should be able to be used to make money. Okay. I've got some great examples where I'm using AI art to benefit myself in a commercial way, which is brilliant. Okay. It's opened up access and ability to higher quality art for anyone who has access to this technology is able to do that, which is one of the greater benefits that I don't see critics acknowledging well enough. Okay, they focus on the fact that it will take people's jobs. One, ignoring the fact that it'll create a new industry with new jobs, and the people who'll be able to, get those occupations will be the artists who choose to embrace AI and use it for their benefit to enhance their art beyond their own ability. I'm doing that already, and I've been seeing benefits. I am an artist. Am I a great artist? I'll leave other people to decide that. I think I'm middling at best, but I am most certainly a more professional standard writer, and I'm very excited and interested to use AI text generating programs to improve the quality of my writing. Yeah, absolutely. If it can produce a better result to my fans and customers, so to me, that's a win-win, and I don't lose a job because I'm using it to benefit. And it also means that I can devote money where it's more needed. Okay, I can save money on certain development costs and produce more work with actual artists. Yes, I work with artists. I hire artists not only for the cover art for my novels, but also to produce comic books. I have a comic book company now, and I'm producing graphic novels. The first campaign was very successful, and working with great artists, I'll be able to save money in certain areas and put money to where I need to. We're working with human artists, right, to produce even more work. No one's losing a job. In actual fact, it enables me to hire more people at the stuff that actually has greater results there, the stuff that's needed, all right, because I can save money elsewhere thanks to the AI. So huge benefit there. And there are so many people that can't afford the highest quality art, okay, professional standard art, especially in the indie scene. I think AI art is going to be one of the most wonderful things for indie creators, especially indie authors that need better quality cover art. And I experienced when I had first finished Out of the Conqueror, YouTube wasn't going huge, okay, it was starting to pick up, all right, but I needed a cover for my novel, and I hired a lower-end cover artist who basically did photo bashing from, hopefully, stock images, and the result looked cheap. It was crap. And one of the big difficulties for indie authors is that the cover art makes it look cheap. Okay, people do judge a book by its cover. Thankfully, after editing and things like that, YouTube had picked up, and I had the means to hire a phenomenal artist who can't wait to work with again, Chris McGrath, who did the cover for this. But you know what he didn't do? He didn't do the back end cover. I didn't have the money for it. It still cost, I won't reveal, but it was thousands of dollars to get that right. And so I had to try and Photoshop the back of this cover. See the clouds right here? I had to duplicate that to get the cloud there. And it took hours and hours of work. You know what I could have done? The AI would have been able to produce a better result for the back cover of this for much less time investment. That's amazing, all right? That's phenomenal. And I still work with an artist, right? And I still will in the future, but AI art enables me to produce a better quality results and gives me more options with the resources I have and thousands of indie creators, okay? And there's always going to be a demand for the best quality human artists, okay? The guy that, did the low quality cover, he'll probably lose a job because his quality was very low. And you can get better quality cover art, AI generated for free, than them. But you know who could produce the best quality AI generated cover art? That cover artist who did the photo bashing. If he can photo bash certain compositions and then feed it into the AI to get a better result, he was not going to lose a job, all right? In actual fact, that might help him get more work in the long run. And especially because there might be a high demand. So again, there's going to be a new industry with this, with new jobs and availability, and it's not going away. The Pandora's box has been opened. People have access to this technology. Some of it's even open source. As a result, you will be vastly better served instead of resisting it because the Pandora's box has already been open, but finding ways in which it can benefit you as an artist to open up new opportunities. Otherwise, you will legitimately be outcompeted by people who are using AI to produce phenomenal quality results, but you as an artist could outproduce them. You can make better quality than them because if you have the artistic eye to understand proportions, composition, and everything like that, you could get a better finished result, especially if you're talented with photo bashing and other things like that. And so the guy that did the original cover that I never used, again, there's a massive opportunity for him. And then it opens up accessibility to higher quality art for countless numbers of people at a much better price, which is one of the greatest benefits of this technology that I can see. And even though people will lose jobs, there's going to be further opportunities, like I said, and the best will still get the jobs as well. Here's another example where AI art has benefited me greatly and enabled me to offer a higher quality result to my customers than I would have been able to otherwise, and where no one lost a job, okay? This wasn't robbing an artist of a job. And it's in putting together the final print files for the graphic novel. And on the inside of a book, you have a cover page, and usually it's something pretty standard. This is the cover page for the novel, but we realized that the internal paper for the graphic novel, which is the comic book version of this, was much higher quality. It's made to take color on it really, really well. So having a plain cover page on the inside was a bit of a letdown, a loss. There was an opportunity that we could make a really fun colored thing, but we needed to get the files to the printer, and so I did not have time to commission an artist to do anything, and it just would have been stuck on the plain quality. But this is where I was able to use AI to produce a better quality image for my customers, a better quality product. And so I grabbed a kind of warped image of the map that I had made. I color coded it, gave it a cloudy background, fed it into the AI until I got one that I was happy with. And this was constant tweaking and working with it and artistic input to get the result that I wanted until I got one that matched kind of the comic book style, but then needed clouds and everything to fit the aspect of the page. And so I inputted this to get the result of this, a full colored image landscape spread of the continent of Everfall for the cover page of the graphic novel. And it looks phenomenal. I wouldn't have been able to do this without it. I was enabled to produce and offer a higher quality product to my customers at no additional cost for them with the means that I had at the moment. I would not have had the means to be able to produce this without AI, okay? I didn't have the time to commission artists to do it. No one lost it. It just enabled me to produce a better quality product, which is incredible. As a creative individual who uses my creativity and artistic passion to produce things for my fans and customers, this is an incredible tool that, if you embrace, and I've been experiencing it firsthand, will enable you to produce better quality stuff, which then hopefully will get you more customers because it's better quality as well, not having to increase the price. And the money that I might have had to spend on this, if I had the time to commission on an artist, I can give that money to the cover artist who is doing the internal pages to produce the graphic novel and enable me to produce more because I can redirect my resources now. I don't need to waste it on things that I can now produce with the AI and then put it in areas to produce more high quality stuff for my fans and customers. And that's brilliant. It's like a win-win. No one's lost a job and just creates better quality and higher volume of awesome things for people to be able to enjoy. Awesome art and stories for them to be able to consume. And that's great. An interesting point that I think a lot of artists maybe perhaps either don't acknowledge, realize, and might not be the same for everyone, but they don't actually enjoy the act of drawing, painting, or illustrating. Otherwise, why aren't they doing nothing but drawing straight lines on a paper? Or why don't they love painting the walls of a house as much as when they paint something? What they actually love, and this is what I discovered for myself, it's the act of creation that I love, okay? I thought I wanted to be a comic book artist growing up. This is why I have the level of drawing capacity I have, and it's not, brilliant, but it's not terrible either. It's very mid-range. It took me years to develop that because I wanted to be a professional comic book artist before I realized that it wasn't the act of drawing I enjoyed. And when I had to draw other things that people were commissioning me to do, hated it. It was miserable. Didn't enjoy it. It was the act of creating the stories in my mind, and I found that writing was a much greater outlet for creating those stories than drawing. But now I can hire other artists to draw and depict those stories for me. But the thing is, though, the actual act itself usually isn't the enjoyable thing for a lot of artists. It's the act of creation. And we end up using the mediums that give us the most satisfying results. I mean, for instance, digital artists, a lot of them use Photoshop. Why do they use Photoshop if they love drawing or painting so much? Some probably do, and some probably prefer it, but a lot of artists pick Photoshop because it gives them the best results. Well, guess what? AI is a tool that you can use to get really satisfying results. Now, if you think that this will somehow stop the world and people from developing artistic ability in the original mediums, both digital art, but painting and drawing, I call complete bullcrap on that, okay? The camera's been around for ages, can do perfect, images of the real world, yet people still do still life paintings, okay? Is it because they want to challenge photography and beat? No, they can't beat in terms of one-for-one actual perfect realism. Sometimes people enjoy the act of creating in those mediums because they just enjoy it. And for those people who enjoy perhaps not the act of drawing, otherwise why they draw lines on a paper, but they derive satisfaction of creating artwork in that medium. It's the combination of the medium and the act of creation that they enjoy. And just like we've seen with still life painting, people still do it, even though we've got the camera that competes them by a mile, because they enjoy it, okay? And though the industry and the professional tools might change in the future because of AI, people are still going to draw with pencils, they're still going to paint with brushes because they enjoy it, okay? The satisfaction of doing something with tools that are more difficult, okay, still there. People like to do things that are difficult for the satisfaction and achievement of doing it. That will always exist. The professional world and those who are producing artwork in a professional capacity for money and stuff like that, yeah, people using AI will be outcompeting a lot of people, okay? And so there will be jobs lost, but you could have been the ones to get those new jobs because you can produce the best quality AI art if you have artistic talent. By far, by country mile. And for myself, because I actually don't enjoy the act of drawing, I enjoy the act of creation, and I've been drawing more now than ever with AI art. AI is another tool that helps me express my artistic vision, and I feel as much artistic satisfaction in the AI-generated images as my own hand-drawn ones, because it's a tool that requires my artistic input to get such beautiful results. Here's an example. This is an AI image made of my wife. I trained the AI to be able to understand my wife's face, and it is gorgeous. It captures her beauty amazingly. And also, I love knights. She's in armor that she might not be too interested in owning, and it wouldn't justify spending the cost in it and things, but it also has this type of digital painting feel, which is brilliant. I never would have commissioned an artist to do this unless she asked for it specifically, but she was never interested in having this type of thing. And it is such a really clean, crisp final result that, guess what? Took work to achieve. I required my artistic input to achieve it, just even with image prompts. This was the first version of that image, okay? It's a mess. The armor is a mess, the clothing is a mess, but the face was beautiful, and it captured so much of my wife that, okay, I could work with that. And so by putting into image and getting it to remake certain elements, I started to refine it, and then refine it again and again and again and again. And then when something worked, it's like, this one, oh, that one has a really interesting pattern right on the breastplate at the upper portion of it, but the line's different. So guess what? I took that into Photoshop, and then I used Paint, and so this next result wasn't AI generated. From this image, I use Photoshop to get this, okay? Again, requiring talent in multiple different, mediums and tools to get the best results. And then when I fixed up some of the wonkiness with Photoshop, I brought that back into the AI, processed it again, got a much cleaner result. It smoothed things out, processed it again and again. And then these ones was changing the face too much, but the pauldrons were looking all right in some of those. And so I grabbed those pauldrons, put it back in, made composites. And so from this one to this one, this is Photoshop. Again, copying one of the pauldrons from the previous image, this image, cut that pauldron out, which was on the back shoulder, and then pasting it together with this one, refining it again and again and again, and then again, Photoshop fixing it up to finally get much cleaner results. We're getting much closer to the final result, and then once I get some really good results, really fine tweaking Photoshop, put it back in, high resolution version, we have the finished image. That required a lot of artistic input, hours of work actually, to get, so it's not one click, okay? And as an additional result, a direct kind of collaboration, a joint hand in creation with the AI. And I feel artistic ownership over this image that I, in a large measure, also created with this tool. In actual fact, I think I can say I created it with AI, but it wasn't. But the disingenuous thing when you say I made it with AI, people just think it's a click. No. This required Photoshop ability, artistic eye, understanding compositions, understanding the correct design of armor, and all of that. This image is actually pretty much impossible to make with AI on its own. It required artistic ability to do. And it's an example of the potential people with artistic ability have in using this program. You will be able to outperform other people using AI if you are already an artist. AI art is an opportunity that can benefit millions of people. Not only for you professionally, it doesn't have to be a threat to lose your job. You can use it to secure your job as an artist and produce better art than you ever could before, and open up accessibility for millions of people to higher quality art at a more affordable price, improving the quality of works globally, which is phenomenal. This is why I'm excited about AI art. This is why I love it. The potential it has is great, and the fear-mongering does a massive disservice to artists. If people truly wanted to try and help artists out, to protect artists' ability to make a living from their art, okay, you would be showing them and teaching them how to use AI art to benefit and improve their final works, or even make just certain processes quicker. Like if you want certain patterns or certain seamless things, like you can make seamless patterns of backgrounds, but also like I need a crystalline pattern for my sword in my book. Here's another great example. So here is the 3D model of the sword of my book, Imperious. Took a lot of artistic ability to do that. I needed to know 3D modeling and everything to make that. And this is the result, but it doesn't do great with rendering output with the program I use, because I use SketchUp. I know I should go up to Blender, but anyway, I'm stuck in my ways. Okay, but I wanted images of Imperious and some of the additional artists, because we actually ended up having more pages for the same amount, for the same price. And so we had pages that we could fill to give people better quality product without needing to pay them, without them needing to pay any more. And so I had an opportunity, and a great image of Imperious, an artistic one, was an opportunity, right? But the description of Imperious is that the blade looks like kind of diamond or sapphire in different colors, like you know, glass, but you can see the precious stone type patterns inside. And so I needed a crystal-like pattern. I have looked online for stock images of like crystal-like patterns multiple times before to try and get that visual result. Couldn't find anything online, so I used Photoshop to try and make like a crystalline pattern. And all the best I could do was using kind of the cloud feature and certain filters and everything to get a type of marble texture, which you see here. So I made this with Photoshop, and I did use it in some of the edits I made for the graphic novel. And if we zoom in here on Imperious, do you see this pattern that you see here to try and give the crystalline look on the sword? That's using that. I used this to achieve that, and it worked well enough. It was passable, but for a more detailed piece in these artistic additional pages that we could add to the, when it's the leather bound that are getting these, I wanted something that actually looked more crystal-like. And how I looked online, couldn't find anything, but then AI literally came to my rescue, AI art. And so I use the AI program to produce this. It is a AI generated pattern of crystals. And then I was able to expand and copy and paste and make a much larger kind of pattern version of that in Photoshop. With that pattern, I was able to make this, an image of Imperious that is more closely reflective of what it's supposed to look like, you know, as described in the book, with this crystal-like pattern underneath kind of this glassy surface. And guess what? The background of this image is also made through AI. With a lot of input, okay, a lot of artistic, you know, meshing in Photoshop and other things like that to get a really great result. And so now this is a whole additional great kind of artistic page that I'm able to add in to the leather-bound versions of the graphic novel and the leather-bound version of the novel that's going to be going to my fans and customers. no additional cost. And so you don't need to use the AI technology to just make finished pieces like you see in the background. You can use it to enhance already existing artworks by finding new textures and patterns and things that can, what I did with Imperius here. And so the people who are opposing AI art with the intention of protecting artists, you're actually going to be harming them by convincing them that it's evil and wrong and shouldn't be used, which means they're going to be outperformed by people who will be using it, okay? When they are the ones who could have produced the best quality work with the use of AI art than anyone else. And so far from being defensive about it, it's a way to enhance your work and secure your ability to find work as an artist in the future. It's here to stay. And so it's a disservice to try and tell people that it's, well, one, it's just dishonest and wrong now to try and tell people that it's stealing art and unethical and all that stuff. But you're also doing a disservice to artists by spreading untruths about them to the point where they will not be using or willing to look at it or anything like that. And then they will be outperformed. And then it might be far too late. As I mentioned multiple times, this technology is here to stay, and trying to just shame people for using it is, one, just makes you look like a complete jerk, especially because there's nothing inherently evil or wrong about the AI programs themselves, as we've talked about, okay? You can use it in bad ways, but in ways many people have been using it to produce new art and everything. There's nothing evil or wrong about it. And shaming people and saying, and by the way, it happens more than you might think, where people say, how dare you promote AI art? Again, it's founded on a place that I understand. They've been convinced by the fearmongers out there that are misrepresenting the facts that there is something inherently unethical and wrong about AI art, and that's inherently stealing other people's work. And that's the comments that happen, where even the videos that I've made, there's been a couple of commenters who say, I thought better of you, you're promoting artistic theft by using AI art and accusing me of being a bad person as a result. That is never going to get the results that people want. Well, like, people are just going to stop doing, it's going to make people who you accuse like that think that you're uninformed and also being uncharitable, like, people who get accused of being wrong and evil for using AI to make new art and stuff like that in perfectly ethical ways, and they're accused of being doing something wrong, that sounds bigoted to them. And they're not going to look nicely on you, and it's just going to cause more divide. The thing that's been more upsetting for me in this regard was many of the comments that happened with my brother's video. I did a collaboration with Jazza from Draw with Jazza, and because his community is more art-focused, the amounts that people have been convinced that AI, falsely, I like these based on false information or flat out lies, right? That AI art is inherently stealing other people's artworks, everything. This falsehood is getting spread more and more and more because the people who are the spokesmen pushing out against it, when you actually look into the facts of the matter, they're founded on complete untruth. All right, it doesn't inherently steal. It doesn't copy. Taking things. I've already made a whole video on that, right? So I don't blame people for thinking it's unethical when they've been fed untruths about this. But the people who have been spreading these falsehoods, I think it's on them. They should have been doing far more research to find out if this is actually true or not. Speak to the developers. Speak to people who use AI art to find out. And they say they've heard the arguments, and then they're like I said, I've found certain, spokespeople against AI art being somewhat disingenuous, using very emotionally manipulative language to try and get people to think that there is something inherently wrong with it, ignoring counter arguments, like, they're saying that I'm not informed enough to be able to comment on fair use, but suddenly I'm perfectly informed enough to comment on all these other things, and giving a very uncharitable interpretation of some things, skewing the proportion of other things to ultimately present a really negative picture that has convinced a lot of people. And the fact that so many people were so negative to my brother for making a video with me about how AI art can benefit you as an artist was a bit shocking to me, and it really illustrated how much these falsehoods have been spread around. They need to be addressed, and many people have already been trying to do this. I want to give a shout out to Royal Skies. He's done one of the most in-depth rebuttal videos to one of the most prominent anti-AI videos that was made by Steven Zabata Art. And honestly, I found Steven's video uncharitable, misinformed, spreading flat-out misinformation, falsehoods. He skews the information and facts to support his views. He vilifies the very notion of AI, as well as fear-mongering its potential outcomes, as well as being extremely emotionally manipulative. Royal Sky's video does a great job at addressing each one of Stephen's points, but unfortunately is criminally underviewed. So if you do want to hear another in-depth breakdown of the counter-argument in support of AI art, please check out Royal Sky's rebuttal to Stephen Zabata. And even if after watching, say, my video or Royal Sky's video, we've been unable to convince you, you need to understand that people who understand the things that I'm saying, and perhaps even if I've convinced a couple of people who already knew these things, right? They're not going out thinking, I can't wait to steal people's art. They honestly believe it's perfect, like I do, that there is nothing unethical about using AI art generation programs, okay? They're not trying to ruin someone's day or destroy the artistic community. I support human individual artists and give them work, okay? Probably vastly more so than the artists who are trying to support other artists and protect them by fighting AI, when I've actually been supporting art probably financially more than they have, to the order of thousands and thousands of dollars, both in hiring cover artists, but also in producing comic books, and I'll be doing more in the future because, yes, I am one who wants to support the artistic community. I've been doing it for a while already. And so the accusations that I am against artists in some way because I use AI art is grossly disingenuous and just flat out wrong. Same with my brother, okay? He sees the opportunities of what this has and how it can benefit artists and produce better work. And the people who fearmonger need to hopefully get more informed on the matter, and hopefully those people that have heard all the naysaying kind of arguments and feel AI art is bad and everything, the damage will not have been done too much to the point where they can see the benefit of it, and they won't be cutting their legs out from underneath them and handicapping them to be able to compete in the future, because they are the ones who could use AI art to the best ways possible to outcompete everyone else, because you need artistic input, as I've shown, to get the best results. It's an opportunity. So, and it's not going away. And so if you just try and fight against it in I feel a disingenuous way, a way that will cause more divide, because the way that people are trying to fight it is shame people stop using it, okay, which isn't going to work, or to legislate and sue the companies, not because there's legal precedent, but just to get them stuck in financial issues having to deal with litigation endlessly. I've heard the opponents actually say that, not that they think they can win legally, but they think they'll just sue them into oblivion, which is really disingenuous and scummy in my mind. If they're actually doing something illegal, then sue, but just to sue to cause people to lose money and caught up, that's wrong. That's unethical, and I call that out, okay? The people who've been opposing it, some of the strongest voices in the opposition movement, have just come out and said that's their intent. And that is not going to work. That undermines artists and is going to harm them more in the long run, because this isn't going to work. The shaming isn't going to work. The accusations are going to work. It'll just cause people using it to double down and say, screw you, get lost. It'll destroy any possible opportunity for a discussion on it. And the people who are using it are going to see all the benefits that are there, and there are insane, incredible benefits for it. And the people who have been fooled by the fear mongering, okay, are going to miss the opportunity and will get the worst possible, impact that AI art will have when there could have had great benefits. Another point that should be acknowledged in regards to the fear that people are feeling about AI art, okay, is that it's going to put heaps of artists out of a job. Not nearly as many as they might think, especially if they embrace AI art to enhance their art. They're the ones that can benefit from the most. The thing is, though, this is standard technological process, and throughout history we can see so many examples, for the most part, of it being vastly beneficial for humanity as a whole. When the light bulb was invented, it put a lot of candle makers out of work, right? But it also provided better quality light, more consistent light at a cheaper cost for millions of people, and has been a vast benefit for humanity as a result. Making art more affordable, more accessible to more people is going to be massively beneficial for so many people in the world. And yes, there will be industries that will get replaced by AI generated art. Some might even be gutted completely. Things like stock image providers might just get completely, put out of business because of AI generated potential stock images and stuff. Same with the corporate advertising world. But if they're the ones who actually embrace the AI art to actually produce the same things, they'll be at the forefront and be able to produce the best results. It's more of an opportunity, vastly more, to people who are currently employed in the current systems AI art is much more of an opportunity for them than it is a threat if you actually learn how to use it and see ways in which it can benefit you and complement your occupation, your work, and to produce better results. And once again, that's been the pattern with technological development. Those who try and kick against the progress of humanity get left in the dust by people who actually use that technology for their benefit. There are also so many points of references to be able to show equivalences in this type of technological development that there's too many to acknowledge. Like, for instance, sound synthesizers that enabled, musicians to be able to get the sound of a cello, when they're making music. Did that put a celloist out of a job? Okay, but on the other side, it enabled musicians to be able to produce really high quality music at a much better cost and at a vastly better result. The benefits outweighed the negatives in a large measure. And then on top of that, I think I mentioned this before, is that those who just love doing this work thing because they love it, the cello, people still play musical instruments and things, even though there might be less work for them to be able to build a livelihood off of. Doesn't mean people just stop doing it because they enjoy it. Just like with art, if you enjoy art, you'll make art the way you want to because you enjoy it, okay? And if you want to make a living off of it, you do need to embrace new technology, the progress of humanity, to be able to compete and produce the best quality work that is available. Some people claim using AI art is cheating. And they don't really know how much work sometimes it takes to produce a really high-quality, professional, standard piece of work from AI art. They must be completely ignorant of that because sometimes it takes hours of work and artistic input to be able to produce great results. I've shown some direct examples right here. And so it's certainly not a simple click cheating. And if it is cheating, right, which it's not, but so photography is cheating. Like, is photography an art form? You're stealing, capturing an image of the real world and stolen in time forever for people to look at it. Like, there's equivalence that you can make that you're cheating essentially to capture that image so easily. And do we call photography a type of art form? Yes, of course we do, because it takes an artistic eye to find the right angle, the right kind of lighting, figure out the best quality settings to get the best capturing photograph of that scene as possible. Of course, photography is an art, just like AI-generated art is an art, because guess what? There are similar types of skills that you need to get the best quality results. You need to understand how to work with the tool, just like you need to understand the best settings. You need to understand the best settings for the AI programs. You need to understand how to prompt, and then you need the artistic eye, just like you need an artistic eye with a camera, okay, to see what the best lighting and angle is, to see the elements of the AI generation. That worked, but that doesn't. I can regenerate that and fix it up, and all those things, okay? There are so many equivalences you can actually make with AI-generated art and photography, and it's so disingenuous to try and claim, this AI-generated art, it's cheating and it's fake and it's false and it requires no artistic input and everything like that. Bull crap, okay? People who say that are very ignorant on the topic and are being very hypocritical, because I don't think those same people would say photography isn't an art form. Wouldn't say many other equivalent types of things isn't an art form either. And look, we saw similar things with like Photoshop coming around, digital art, and that if you're not actually doing it with a real pencil and everything, it's not real art and all that stuff. It is all very elitist fear-mongering. And this is the unfortunate pattern that I'm seeing. And I get the impression, I'm happy to be wrong, but it seems more consistent that the pushback, okay, this kind of fear-mongering is less founded on the true unethical, things of the AI art, because when you look into it, it's not nowhere near as unethical, and it's not stealing and all that stuff, okay? It's not there. And so the truth of they might honestly believe it, but I get the impression that they're not looking to find the counter arguments to prove themselves wrong, because they're more threatened. They feel threatened by this, and as a result, their perspective gets skewed to only look for things to validate that feeling of being threatened. Therefore, let's fight it, let's oppose it, let's push back against it. They're not as inclined to see, hear, and then also acknowledge the counter arguments that contradict the things that they've been saying about it being inherently unethical and stealing and stuff like that. And as a result, it very much gives the impression that this is more of a knee-jerk reaction from a feeling of being threatened than it is the actual validity of the moral, ethical, and legal, potential problems of our art. When you actually look into it, they're not really valid, those problems. And that's actually quite disingenuous, skewing the reality of the matter, okay? Vilifying something because you're more feeling threatened and you don't want to embrace, this wonderful technological tool and the progress of society. Like, there's so many potentials, and also the fact they've been willing to shame and accuse people of being morally unethical and stuff who support it and everything. That's honestly disgusting, okay? And it does give me a good impression of these, but it's the result of, I think, which is genuine feelings of feeling threatened, feelings being replaced, and there is vastly more opportunity than there is to be afraid of this technology, okay? And you could benefit the most from it. Artists, you could benefit the most from it, more than anyone else, okay? And so those are the things that I wanted to share. It is a very passionate subject of mine, and look, I'm not defending AI art because I use AI art, and no. I'm defending it because I honestly think I've looked into the accusations and stuff, and I don't like misinformation, and there's opportunity, like I said. I do appreciate everyone who's watching, especially if you stuck with me all through to the end. Thank you. Look, I look forward to reading the comments, especially those people who disagree with me, but please don't make counter arguments that already get addressed by the things and topics and subjects that I've addressed in the video, because that just means you weren't paying attention or weren't watching the whole thing. But for those people who have watched and still disagree, there's a discussion I'm more than willing to have, even with the more vocal opponents of AI art. Love to discuss it with them. And also, if I've been able to convince you, or if you already understood and everything like that and see that there's misinformation about being thrown about, please use this video as a point of reference to be able to share more truth on the matter, that AI art is not inherently evil, unethical, and always steals art by its use, okay? You can link the video to the comments, to the videos, so we can try and spread the correct information, the actual truth of the matter. Once again, do appreciate you all for watching. Thank you for it. And we'll be returning to the regularly scheduled Shadiversity content, though this might not be the last AI subject video that I'll make. It'll just be in addition to the regular content, okay? If you are interested in it, I hope to see you there. If not, I hope to see you on the regular Shadiversity content. So until that time, farewell.